Hi everyone, thanks for joining today. I'm going to teach you guys how to make bath melts. This is going to be a base recipe using 3 ingredients, and I will go ahead and do some explaining of the recipe and teach you how you can swap out the ingredients and how you can totally customize this recipe. First, you want to measure out the cocoa butter and the shea butter. I do my recipe giving them equal parts. You don't have to do that though. You can substitute some of the shea butter with mango butter or aloe butter or any other kind of butter that you feel comfortable with. And if you want to sub it, you can, just play with the ratios. The next thing you're going to want to do is melt those 2 butters down, or whatever you choose to do down. I highly recommend doing this in the double boiler instead of a microwave, just because it's a little bit easier, and that way you're making sure that you're not scorching your butters and preserving all the good qualities that the butters have to offer. Before we move on to the next ingredient, I just wanted to remind you guys to go ahead and hit the like button if you're enjoying this recipe, and don't forget to subscribe. On my channel I do lots of videos with soap making, and then I also want to incorporate more videos like this that are just overall bath and body type videos, and teach you how to use stuff that you can not only make for home if you want to make for personal use, but also sell on your Etsy store. This used to be one of my biggest sellers at Etsy, just because there were so many ways to customize this, and my customers love that. At the end of the video, I'm going to show you some ways to customize the recipe, plus I'm also going to show you some packaging ideas as well. Okay, so now we'll move on to the third and final ingredient of this recipe. Once these butters are all the way melted down, the last ingredient that you want to add is jojoba oil. If you're not super familiar with it, it is a wonderful oil. I like to use it in a lot of my skincare products. It has a lot of anti-aging properties, as well as like anti-inflammatory, anti-acne, and so on. You can do a little bit of research and find out more information for yourself. This is what I typically use, and you can also swap this oil out if you don't want to use this. You can use other oils such as sweet almond oil or avocado oil, whatever you feel like you would like, but personally I would highly recommend the jojoba oil. And when I add the oil in, I just do 2 huge spoonfuls of the oil, and I add that in once the butters are all the way melted. And the reason I do that is because this oil is already liquid and it's a little bit more sensitive to heat, so I just want to make sure that I'm not burning off of all the beneficial properties. From here on out, everything else that you add into the recipe is completely optional and customizable. This is really where the recipe stops. After you get done with this, you can pop these into a mold and then put them in the freezer. I like to use flower buds or sometimes clays and micas in mine, just to give them a little bit extra. So I'm going to do half the recipe in rosebud and kaolin clay, and then the other half is going to be lavender buds and gold mica. And I just wanted to show that I'm putting them on a tray, because my silicone tray tends to flop, and since I'm going to be picking this up and moving it to the fridge, I wanted to make sure it had a nice sturdy place to sit. And I always add the flower buds on these once I've poured them, to make sure that the batter is starting to set up a little bit, and that way some of them, they don't just like sink to the bottom or float to the top. Always, if you use this recipe exactly the proportions I gave you, you will always get 6 little hearts, and this is the Wilton mold. They also have another little cupcake one that I use, and sometimes I fill those about 3/4 of the way full, and that gives you 3 of them. Next thing you want to do is pop it in the fridge. I usually pop it in there for about 3 to 4 hours, just to make sure everything's hard. Then once everything's hard, they're really easy to pop out. And this has shimmer in it, but the camera doesn't pick the shimmer up that well, but when you get that running in the bath water, the shimmer is just going to take over the entire bath. Then the other ones is, this is the rose with the kaolin clay. If I didn't put the clay in, you could probably see the rose petals a little bit better. Okay, and I just wanted to make sure that I showed you the final product as is, and this is how I used to send them to my customers. But let's take it a step further and add a nice creamy drizzle to the top of these, because I think that would really push this over the top. For the drizzle, we want to take some cocoa butter, and I just took a couple spoonfuls, and I'm eyeballing this because we don't have very many. Then you want to make sure you melt the cocoa butter all the way down until it's completely liquid form. I chose to add some mica powder to the mixture, and I want to do this before I add anything else to make sure that we get that all the way stirred in. I'm also going to add just a touch of glitter because I love shimmer. I'm going to use like a dark purple glitter that I got from Nurtures. The next ingredient that I want to add to the mixture is baking soda, and you want to do this very slowly and just add a couple spoonfuls at a time and let it thicken up. You want to keep in mind that as the cocoa butter thickens up, or as the cocoa butter cools down, it's going to thicken up on its own, and the baking soda is also going to thicken it up as well. So just kind of play with the mixture and get it to the desired consistency that you liked. I wanted to make sure the drizzle was a little bit slower, and what I have right now I just think is too much. So just keep adding and mixing until you get it the way you like. And here's the really fun part. This is where the drizzle was completely cool. We wanted to make sure that we're not going to melt the bath melts. And we just go ahead and sprinkle it on top here, nice and slowly. See how this drizzle is? That's the consistency that I wanted. And I did just want to mention that if you are making these and selling these to your customers, you may want to put a warning on the actual label itself, letting your customer know that these will make your bath time very slippery and slick, because there's a lot of oil in them. I've never had really anyone complain about them, but I just always take that precautionary measure. And that is the final product, and I went ahead and popped those in the fridge again just so they would cool down. And when I wrap mine, I got these foil papers that I found online, and they're 6x6, but I just chose to cut these down, and I would recommend just cutting them down in half after experimenting with these and playing with them. I also use these to cover, things like bath bombs and stuff, but since I had so many extra on hand, I thought this would make a nice alternative to packaging.